A jungle boy grows into the clumsy Lord of the Swinging Vines in George of the Jungle, the live-action version of the animated TV show and one of the big summer movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. They only made 17 George of the Jungle TV shows in the 1960s. They were from Jay Ward, the producer of the Rocky and Bullwinkle series, and all I remember is the theme song, George, George, George of the Jungle. But from this flimsy material, the filmmakers have fashioned a pretty funny movie. Here's the running gag, should I say the swinging gag, about clumsy George, who comes to the aid of a cute heiress and her obnoxious fiancé as they hunt for a legendary white ape. George is played by Brendan Fraser, who is perfectly cast for the role. Good-looking, buff, but convincing as a doofus. The heiress is played by Leslie Mann, and she's freaked when at George's lair she finds he has a most intelligent ape as a butler.
I mean, why wouldn't an ape read textbooks, and why wouldn't I find myself in a treehouse with room service and a Tarzan wannabe?
One of the funniest gags in the film, George's pet dog, who has tusks.
Come on, boy, come on! Good boy, Sim, come on! Sit. Good boy!
Does every gag work? No. Does every swinging vine gag work? No. But the film does have plenty of good cheer.
George, watch out for that!
And what I really appreciate about George of the Jungle is the way the filmmakers attempt to break form by having the script kid itself, by acknowledging the narrator, by throwing in a few mature gags and references. It's not a by-the-numbers movie treatment of a TV show like Beverly Hillbillies or The Flintstones. Thumbs up for me on this one.
Thumbs up for me, too. And I laughed loudly when that elephant came on screen.
Big time.
The elephant named Shep.
Right.
Who's a dog. When he bounds into the screen, slides to a halt, sits on his haunches, wags his tail, and starts to pant, it was just one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie.
I mean, somebody's thinking there, and that's what you appreciate upon reflection is somebody's trying, not just doing the pilot. That's what was wrong with some of these shows. All the movies, they just do the pilot again bigger.
This is you talked about George as a doofus, which he is.
Right.
But the movie was not made by doofuses. It's a smart movie about a doofus. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Next movie, our next
What an insight. Aren't you proud that you could come out? I know.
What an insight. Yes, I am proud of myself. Yes. And I'm happy that you noticed it. Our next movie has the rather wicked name Mrs. Brown. Wicked because that is what some of her subjects whispered about Queen Victoria when she developed a great emotional dependence on her horse groom, a man named John Brown. The film opens in 1864 when the Queen is still in deep mourning after the death of her beloved consort, Prince Albert. In her sorrow, she has retreated from London to her palace at Osborne on the Isle of Wight, where Brown, her Scottish stablemaster, thinks he knows what's best for her.
You have been told repeatedly not to stand in the courtyard unless requested to do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Then why do you persist in doing it?
Because I believe Her Majesty's wrong. If ever a poor soul needed some fresh air, it's her.
That's Judi Dench as Queen Victoria and Billy Connolly as John Brown. Of course, a commoner should not talk to the Queen that way, but she permits it, and gradually a strange, chaste flirtation develops between them, and he becomes protective of her.
We stayed a little longer than expected with Mr. and Mrs. Grant. It was most agreeable.
We were expecting you to return by 6.
And now I'm back.
And we had a wee nip of whiskey.
To keep out the cold.
Aye.
Thank you, John.
The Queen's son, the Prince of Wales, resents the way this man, Brown, has taken over the royal household.
Well, I'm sorry, but I really do think it's intolerable that the gentleman of the house should be dictated to by a servant.
It's the Queen's decision.
Beg your pardon? Mama?
I think you should go now. You've tired your mother enough.
Gossip spreads throughout the land. The Queen hardly knows her own mind, they say, until this Scottish commoner makes his wishes known. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, journeys north and confronts Brown, who is concerned for the Queen's safety.
It's danger. I keep telling them, but they don't see it.
They're not as watchful as you.
Too busy thinking about themselves.
The greasy pole.
No loyalty.
No, love.
And that's Anthony Sher as Disraeli. I suppose Mrs. Brown is a love story, although presumably no sex is involved, and Victoria was in mourning all of her days for her beloved Albert. Intoxicated by his closeness to the throne, blinded by his regard for the Queen, Brown goes a little mad, and so does she. Mrs. Brown is a fascinating character study and an early candidate for big-time Academy Award nominations.
Absolutely, Roger, and certainly a candidate. Not forget it, it's going to make my top 10 list. It's going to have to be a record year if there are 10 better films than this. It's spectacular. And, you know, I've been asked over the years, you know, are there certain genres that you have trouble with? And I've said sometimes science fiction, because there's always doom and gloom, and sometimes costume dramas, because they always seem to be pretending that they're all Shakespeare in some way, some arch version of Shakespeare. They're not talking. And I believe it's 30 years since this story.
More or less,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you think human behaviors change that much? Emotions change?
No.
But no, of course not. But the costume dramas, everybody changes. And what I love about it is Judi Dench's performance is as dead real. The emotions are as contemporary as can be.
I disagree with you about costume dramas. I could name 100 that violate your generalization there. But apart from that, in case of this film, I totally agree with you. These values are totally modern.
Right.
And
it's a heartbreaking,
easy to identify with and universal.
Story.
And the way that they are both, it's a Victorian age after all.
Right.
The way they're both kind of getting around the fact that they really do have a love for each other.
Right.
And the fact that she's the Queen and has the power to do whatever she wants, and her advisors are aghast and are shocked.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating dynamic that's
It's a love story. You know, I think of American President, you know, with Annette Bening and Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
I mean, and people love that story and all that. This is better. I mean, this is just as romantic, and it's heartbreaking, and the acting is top flight. I will hope this will become a mainstream hit. I doubt it, but I'd love to see it happen. Coming up next, Tim Robbins and Martin Lawrence play the latest buddy team. They join forces to rob Robbins' rotten boss in Nothing to Lose.
Which one did you think was scary?
You were scary.
Really?
You were scary, too.
Oh, come on, you're just saying that. You don't have to lie.
Car, keys, wallet, now. Helen Keller, I'm talking to you.
Boy, you picked the wrong guy on the wrong day.
Come on, there's a truck right there.
Tim Robbins having a bad day there, playing a carjacked advertising executive, depressed over the thought of his wife's affair with his boss in the new comedy Nothing to Lose. And he's also depressed as he's being mugged by petty thief Martin Lawrence. But then they both have an idea. Join forces to do some really big-time thievery. Here's the way Robbins makes the pitch.
What do you know, Lanky? I know. You go for the big score. One robbery, you're set. News flash, Big Slim. People with big money, they protect it. So you do a little research.
Tim Robbins plots to rob his ad agency boss, who keeps a lot of money in a safe, but other thieves want it too, and they can shoot straighter than Martin Lawrence. Here's some of the film's more forced comic byplay.
You shot me. I'm sorry. You don't say you're sorry when you shoot someone. You say you're sorry when you step on someone's toe or you accidentally break their glasses.
A good sight gag? When the other thieves threaten Lawrence's life.
Don't touch the sheet, please. Don't. No, don't move. Move.
Gotta move the hand.
I really don't think you should be moving right now. I think you're moving.
I saw Nothing to Lose about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't thought about it for a single moment since I saw it. It wasn't unpleasant to sit through. Now, is that damning a film with faint praise? Okay, but that's my review. Just faint praise, thumbs down for me.
I give it faint indifference. In fact, I give it active, enthusiastic indifference. This movie was a waste of 2 hours of my life, and it had some good, talented people in it.
Well, that's the
Tim
surprise.
Robbins,
That's the surprise. Tim Robbins obviously catching a paycheck because this isn't the kind of picture that he normally
this
gets
is the
involved
same
in.
director who did the second Ace Ventura picture, and here he's got a couple of gags that kind of work, and then he has all of this really misplaced social commentary that belongs in a different kind of picture, and by the end of the film, utter indifference is, I think, the appropriate response.
That's what we both reacted to. When we come back, Jackie Chan survived some incredible stunts in Operation Condor.
Jackie Chan uses the elbows of his partner to battle a bad guy in Operation Condor, yet another example of the way he has combined action and broad comedy to become one of the world's most popular stars. This isn't a new movie. It was released as The Armor of God 2 in 1991, but this is the American premiere, and Jackie Chan's movies are more or less interchangeable. This one is a good example of his work. One thing we know going into the theater is that Jackie Chan does his own stunts, and that makes a scene like this one doubly interesting. It's not a stunt double. That's Jackie himself flying through the air. The plot is pretty goofy, involving Nazi gold buried in the North African desert, along with this convenient wind tunnel that provides a great prop for an extended action sequence. Operation Condor contains about as little dialogue as is possible to use in a talking picture. The plot is paper thin, the characters are silly, and yet the movie works and is entertaining in the same way silent comedies are entertaining, because the central character is a strong comic character with great timing and coordination, and we like him. Jackie Chan may be an acquired taste, but I've acquired it.
I've acquired it too. You've heard this story before when I asked George C. Scott, how do you decide the really good actors from the stars? And he said a joy of performing quality. I mean, Jackie Chan has it. You know, he's on there. I'm out to please you. I'll do anything. I'll risk my own life to make you laugh and enjoy yourself. And that's what happens in the picture. It's a lot of fun. Coming up next, the re-release of an important motion picture from the 1960s, Jean-Luc Godard's domestic drama Contempt, co-starring Brigitte Bardot. Our next film up for review is nothing less than a masterpiece, I think. New Wave French director Jean-Luc Godard's 1963 film Contempt, about life and work, about marriage and the movies. Michel Piccoli stars as a screenwriter who has his eye more on his paycheck than on his attractive wife, played surprisingly well by Brigitte Bardot, who proves here that she is a true actress and not just a sex kitten. Her character isn't happy about being dragged along to the Roman villa of a lecherous Hollywood film producer played by Jack Palance. Back home, tension begins to flare between the writer and his wife. This is handled in a totally credible, measured way.
Pourquoi tu pensais être pensif?
Figure-toi que c'est parce que je pense à quelque chose. Ça t'étonne?
Later, on location in Capri, the writer makes another decision that essentially sells out his wife to the producer.
Paul.
You mind if your wife comes along with me?
Est-ce que ça vous ennuie que votre femme vienne avec nous?
Non, pas du tout. Vas-y, Camille.
That is a powerful moment. Contempt is also very wise about the world of filmmaking, featuring no less than the legendary director Fritz Lang as the director of the movie they're all working on. It's a version of the Odyssey, and Contempt makes very clear that you don't have to be a Greek legend to go on an epic journey. Each one of us does so with our everyday lives. Let me put it directly. Godard's Contempt, in this newly restored version, which I saw for the first time in my life, is one of the great films I have ever seen. I really thought it was terrific.
I can't rate it that highly,
Wow.
Gene. I feel that, as so often in the case of Godard, whose work I have always found to be very interesting and intriguing, he objectifies and pushes us out and makes us see the surface and keeps telling us it's a movie and adds particular camera movements and other devices in order to prevent the emotions from being realized and being expressed fully.
Roger, you heard me. No,
I heard you, and I can't explain it.
My deepest emotions. I think it's all there. I don't think. And by the way, I think that the intellectual charge against Godard, if that's what you're making, can be valid in some of his films, but not in this one. I think this is probably the most human of Godard films, which is why it stood out so much for me.
I'm glad you liked it so much. I think it's a good film too, but I would certainly not categorize it as one of the greatest films of all time by any means. I feel one of the things that one of the problems is Fritz Lang is an icon. It's wonderful to have Fritz Lang in the movie, but as a performer, he is rather disappointing, and Jack Palance, as a matter of fact, sticks out like a sore thumb. The original casting would have been Kim Novak, Frank Sinatra. That might have been interesting.
I'll tell you that Palance, for me, was dead on. I didn't find him sticking out at all. And Lang has some wonderful things about, you've always got to shoot the movie. There's a great moment there, and I think he delivers that line very well.
When we come back, my video pick of the week, Kenneth Branagh's stunning version of Hamlet.
Murder most foul. Hey, Nestle Raisinets. At the movies or at home, Raisinets.
When Kenneth Branagh's magnificent version of Hamlet was released late last year, the good news was that it was a full-length, uncut, complete version of Shakespeare's play. And the bad news for some moviegoers was that they had to sit there for all 4 hours of it. I found it exciting and absorbing, but I know some moviegoers are simply too restless for a 4-hour movie, and so the video version of Hamlet, which is being released this week, will give them a chance to hit the pause button every now and then, just as the original viewers of Shakespeare's play at the Globe Theatre could take a break between acts. Branagh starred as the troubled Prince of Denmark in a drama staged on a magnificent set, including a throne room lined with mirrors, allowing Hamlet to literally ask himself one of the most famous questions in literature.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them.
This is one of the greatest of all Shakespeare films, and it's my video pick of the week.
I liked it too. And now a special program note. 3 weeks ago, Roger and I reviewed a movie called The Last Time I Committed Suicide, about Beat Generation icon Neil Cassidy, who inspired such writers as Jack Kerouac, Ken Kesey, and poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
Time is now, and now is all we have.
Well, I liked the film, but Roger said he found it to be a major bore, and our conversation ended with this impromptu challenge.
Jack Kerouac, and I'm sure Ferlinghetti, who is alive and maybe watching this show, would probably laugh at this movie.
We'll find out. I will try and contact Lawrence Ferlinghetti and ask if he laughed at the movie. Well, I guess we can count Mr. Ferlinghetti as a viewer because he saw the movie and our program and wrote us this response, agreeing with Roger's negative vote, saying, in part, and I quote, "It's hard to decide who's committing suicide in this film, perhaps the director." He goes on to say that the actors playing Cassidy and a pal are too clean-cut and seem to be from the wrong class. In real life, he says, Cassidy was the son of a Skid Row working stiff, and that the film, and again I quote Mr. Ferlinghetti, is a ludicrous comment on the whole heterosexual part of the Beat Generation. And it's signed, Love and Kisses, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Well, first of all, it's great to hear from you, Mr. Ferlinghetti, and don't worry. Roger's been wrong about movies before, and he's now in very distinguished company. I can't claim to know the truth of Neil Cassidy as you do, but as a movie, I found the specific portrait of Cassidy as a man who couldn't commit to a woman as quite provocative. The hard-drinking, hard-writing life and that kind of behavior are not exactly strangers in history. I enjoyed the lead performances by Thomas Jane and Keanu Reeves. I enjoyed the last time I committed suicide, and also your letter.
Well, Mr. Ferlinghetti, I'd like you to forget everything that Gene just said. All he did was just recycle his original erroneous review. And you and I, especially you who knew Neil Cassidy, and I who know him through the character Dean Moriarty in On the Road, the wonderful book by Jack Kerouac, will treasure that memory and not allow it to be tarnished by this latter-day, weak recycling. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. 2 affectionate thumbs up for the goofy George of the Jungle with Brendan Fraser as a likable ape man. 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up for Mrs. Brown with strong performances by Judi Dench and Billy Connolly. 2 thumbs down, though, for Nothing to Lose, which has its moments, but not nearly enough of them. 2 thumbs up for Jackie Chan's combination of stunts and broad comedy in Operation Condor. And 2 thumbs up for Jean-Luc Godard's Contempt. Gene thinks it's one of the best films ever made. You can check our votes and hear our reviews of recent movies at our website. The address is www.siskel-ebert.com. That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including Harrison Ford in Air Force One. That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.